Welcome back to the Am I Rich Yet podcast, a weekly podcast where we help millennials and Gen Zs to spend, save, and grow their money smarter. Today we are on episode 10, which is part 2 of our investing series, which is split across 5 different episodes. My name is Georgia. I'm one of your co-hosts. I'm a Gen Z, current MBA student, and, navigating my personal finances.
And I'm Rob, Georgia's dad. I am a recently retired financial advisor, and my job is to help you make better decisions with your money.
Welcome to Rich Yet.
Georgia, what are we going to be discussing today? We know it's part 2 of investing. What's on the agenda?
So today is all about risk tolerance and risk capacity. And with that, I'm going to throw you a question here. What are some risks you've been taking lately?
Well, this morning I decided to take a little bit of a different risk. I like to go for a swim in the morning. I realized I'd gotten a little lazy when the water was a little cold and I'd been going down the ladder because it's just sort of easier to go, 1 foot at a time. But this morning I committed to doing a dive again into the water at least until September. So that's my risk. Not really a risk, but as you get older, you just little things like that. You got to keep doing it. Otherwise, you won't ever do it again.
Yeah, and I think your first time doing something after a period of time, it's been a year since you've dove headfirst into water, that's a risk. You don't know if there's loons down there. You don't know what type of fish, if there might be some muskie or pike. You don't know what's down there.
I'm not worried about that. I'm more worried about the colder water. And so I noticed my dive this morning was rather on the shallow side. So I need to go a little deeper.
Well, one thing I always remember is Omi, Mom's mom, always would say that before you jump into cold water, you get some cold water and splash on the back of your neck and your wrists. And so your body can kind of take some time to warm up to the temperature it's about to jump into so that you're not in total shock.
Wow.
That's
okay.
a good tip.
Good memory. Okay. What's going on with you?
Well, I had a bit of a tough day yesterday.
You did?
I'm navigating a hip injury, which is tough for anyone being injured and not being able to do their kind of normal activities. And so, last night I was pretty frustrated. It's been about a month now. I hope by the time this podcast is on air and live, maybe my hip is better, but there's a chance it might not be. I'm in that kind of negative zone right now where I don't feel too optimistic about much regarding my hip, but I'm feeling optimistic about today's podcast. I'm really excited to be here. And speaking of risks, this feels like a huge risk for me. If you're used to your voice being out there, accessible on YouTube and podcasts, and it's new for me and it feels a bit scary and vulnerable. So this is a big risk I'm taking this summer and I'm excited to see the outcome. It's not scary with you by my side.
Okay, what are we talking about today? 2 things.
So
you mentioned them. What are they?
Yeah, so risk tolerance and risk capacity, which in layman's terms translates to how comfortable you are with an ambiguous outcome.
Okay.
Is that layman's terms?
Okay, so what's interesting about the human population is it's really, in terms of risk profile, it's really a perfect bell curve. Most people are in the middle of that bell curve, okay? And then you've got people to the right, those who are willing to take more risk, and then you've got just as many people on the left who are willing to take less risk. Okay. At the outer extremes of that bell curve, you've got the ultra-conservative people that are just afraid of anything. Everything is scary to them. You mentioned the word growth and that scares them. On the right-hand side, you've got the really big risk takers who aren't afraid of anything. Any risk they're willing to take it. So we're going to talk today about how you can get your risk profile measured. And then something new we're going to talk about, which is risk capacity. And risk capacity is your personal financial ability to take on risk. So it's completely different. And you need a combination of the two to figure out where you should be investing.
Great. And for our listeners, just quickly relate this risk tolerance and risk capacity to investing. Because these two terms are specifically related to investing, right?
Absolutely. So I'm going to first of all put a little bit of an explanation. When I'm talking risk, I'm not talking speculation. I don't believe in speculation. I think it's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. It's a big gamble. Don't speculate.
What do you mean by speculating? I haven't heard that term.
Speculating is betting on a sporting event. Speculating is investing in a new startup company. That's speculating. You may get lucky and grow your wealth, but 9 out of 10 times, you're about to lose a lot of money.
Got it.
And so I just don't believe in it. And I learned that I could never speculate for my clients. And I committed to them that I would never speculate with their money. I never wanted to have to sit across from a client and say, by the way, I lost all of your money on that investment.
Oh, God.
I didn't. That's not acceptable. As a financial advisor, that's not acceptable to ever do that. So we take those out of the equation. We're going to talk about investments that are simple to understand, have been around forever. They're not new and fancy. They make money and they continue to grow. So that's what we're going to focus on.
Awesome.
Okay?
Now, I want to know something. Why is someone's risk tolerance and risk profile important?
Okay. Quite simply, and again, we're not talking speculation, we're talking risk profile capacity. The more risk you take with your investments, the more growth assets you have, whether you want to call it stocks, equity mutual funds, equity ETFs that you have in your portfolio, the more money you will create, the wealthier you will become. Plain and simple. You will compound that money. We talked about compound interest. You will compound that money much faster. After taxes and inflation, your money will continue to grow rapidly. So my dad quote is, I want you to take as much risk as you possibly can take until you can't sleep at night. And that's when we need to scale it back a bit. So everyone's a little bit different, but I am and have been my entire career 100% in equity-based investments for myself. Interesting, the other advisors on my team, 6 other advisors on my previous team, were all 100% equity-based investors. And yet our average client was probably only 70% equity-based investment, which is even higher than the norm of 50-50 or 60-40.
Okay.
So we're going to get into that in a little more detail today. But first, we need to understand risk profile, risk capacity.
And just quickly, if you are not an equity investor, what are you? What are the other types?
GICs, bonds, cash.
Great.
The safe stuff.
All the ones we talked about
Safe,
yesterday.
low returns, high taxes.
Okay.
So your question is, why is it important? Let's talk about tolerance. It guides your investment choices. It basically says, I'm going to look in this box. Think of it, you're grocery shopping. I'm going to shop healthy. So typically in a grocery store, you're shopping around the outside of the grocery store. If you're going to eat not as healthy, you're in the middle of the grocery store where all the boxed food is. Okay, everything is fresh on the outside. Everything's not so fresh on the inside. So it's the same with investing. I want you shopping in the growth side, okay? The good stuff. I don't want you shopping in the middle, plain and simple. It aligns with your risk comfort level. There's no point putting a client, an investor, into a portfolio that they're going to be scared out of. The biggest mistake investors make, and typically when they get scared, is when the investment has lost value. The stock market goes up and down a lot. Every 5 years, the stock market goes down 30%. Every year it goes down 13 to 15%. And if you get scared out of it, here's what happens. That money is literally gone forever. If you sell when investments are down, that money is gone forever. But people will say to me, well, just buy back in when things have recovered. Well, when things recovered, the market's higher. The only way to get back in at a lower price is if things are worse. And if you got scared when it was down 15%, you're not going to get back in when it's down 25%. You're going to be freaked out. You're just going to be scared. You're going to wait until it's back up and gone up 10% from where it was when we started.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky game. I've seen so many clients panic. I've done my best to keep them on track.
Yep.
and they go to cash and they just say, I can't deal with it anymore. Move it all to cash, sell it all. And we move it all to cash, even though I convince them that it's the worst mistake they're ever going to make. When what happens is that money is gone forever. And I tell them that. You just lost $100,000 because that's how much your investments are down. That $100,000, kiss it goodbye. You have 10% less assets now than you started with. So that's my take on it. My job as an advisor is to figure out your risk profile, your risk capacity, and then push you to as far to the right as you possibly can be.
Right.
That's my lesson for today, for your generation. You got a ton of risk capacity. You're young, you got a lifetime. Someone who's 70 doesn't have as much risk capacity if they don't have a lot of money. Someone who's 25, 30 years of age has a ton of risk capacity. You can make some mistakes.
So I'm hearing for people that are looking at getting an advisor, it's important that one of the main things maybe that you should communicate with your advisor or whoever is managing your money, if you're working with someone, is that they understand your risk profile and risk tolerance, because you've just used this example that honestly translates to something similar I'm learning in my hip recovery, which is you need to do my stretches and mobility right up until my threshold. And it can't be a little bit further because then that's going to be harmful to my emotional and physical state. But you need to work right at that line. And what I'm hearing is you're pushing your clients right to their threshold, not any further, because then they're not going to sleep at night.
Makes sense?
Awesome.
We were talking about what are some of the things. Number 2, risk profile. It matches typically your time horizon, how much you've got. It prevents emotional decisions. We've got you in a portfolio. We've got you in a strategy. We're going to stick with it. And supports your long-term success. Here's the simple math. My clients who took on more risk had more growth in their portfolio. Let's say they were 80% in growth versus 60. The ones with 80% had so much more money after 10, 20 years, 30 years of working together than the ones who had 60. It was ridiculous. They could do anything they wanted. And so you're a young generation, I want to try and put you in that position and understanding that today so you can end up with the wealth so you don't struggle, okay? Next up, 3 basic types of investors. We're going to keep it simple. Really conservative investors. I hate to say scared of their own shadow, but they are so comfortable with safe, secure, government-guaranteed investments. Maybe they're not a candidate to have any money in the stock market, in stocks, in growth investments. Maybe they just need to live their life with fixed investments. They're going to pay more in tax. They're not going to keep up with inflation. But typically, they're also savers. They're not spenders. And they don't typically make a good client for a financial advisor because they can't really help them that much. Okay, maybe I can get them an extra half point a year, but that's about it. Now, I can help with the planning side, but typically they don't need a lot of planning because they're such savers that there's more than enough money to work with. Next up is the middle group. We talked about the middle of the bell curve, the balanced investor. They're okay with a little bit in stocks, and it's that group that I want to push to the right. I want to give them more growth in their portfolio. A lot of them will say, because I've worked with you, Rob, I'm more comfortable taking these risks. They view it as risk. I view it as no, it's just opportunity. I'm giving you more opportunity for your money to grow. And finally, the other category is really high growth investors. So if we have conservative, we have balanced, and then we have growth investors. And that growth could be anywhere from 70% in equities all the way up to 100% in equities like I am.
Got it.
So 3 basic, there's lots of in-between categories, low growth, high growth, etc. But let's keep it simple.
So
Where do you think you are?
I think I'd be in the more aggressive side of things. I take risks. I'm not scared of the unknown. I kind of charge right into that direction. So I think you'd make a good financial advisor for me because you'd probably rein me in when I was trying to make some of those more risky
When you started to get into speculation.
Yes.
Dad, a friend told me about this great investment. I want to put $20,000 in it.
Now, I've said that because in other parts of my life, I take on those risks. Do you find those usually correlate? Someone that likes going to the same restaurant every time they go out for dinner versus someone that likes trying a new restaurant every time? Like, do you find that there's similarities in those lifestyle choices in your investment decisions?
Not really. Not
Okay.
really. Sometimes. But for example, I live a fairly conservative lifestyle, but I'm a high growth investor. So that I'm not a big risk taker in life. I'm just not. That's
Okay.
not who I am. Even when you were younger, you took a ton of risk with stuff. The boys would be jumping off a cliff. I'm in.
Or I was leading the cliff jumping.
You were leading the cliff jumping, and now you're a little more hesitant on some of that stuff. You're still pretty adventurous, but you've scaled it back yourself.
So if someone is listening, if there's a listener out there that doesn't know what category they fall into, is there like an online quiz we can do?
There's lots of online risk profiles that you can do. Okay, I happen to use one that was called Finametrica. We've used it for probably 25 years. It was its own standalone company. It eventually got bought out by Morningstar, and they sort of messed it up a little bit. But it was really good. It really did a good job of nailing who the investor were. The banks have their own, but banks are conservative by nature.
Right.
So they don't want any of their clients taking too much risk.
Yep.
So they actually put you in a portfolio that's even more, they go the other way. They push you to as far to the left as I push you to the right.
Got it.
And that's just because they're trying to protect their business. They don't ever want to be sued or whatever. It's a bad thing. And some of the robo-advisors do the same thing. They push you to the left. Again, they're worried about getting in trouble. Okay? That covers a little bit of risk tolerance. Risk capacity. Okay? Think of it this way. How old are you?
26.
If you lost $20,000 in an investment, it went from 20,000 to zero, would that be the end of the world?
Not the end of the world, but much more significant than someone, I presume, in their 60s that saved up a lot more wealth.
But let's say your total wealth was 60,000 and you lost a third of your wealth.
Yeah, significant, huge. That is deadly.
It is deadly, but you can recover.
Okay.
You're 26 years old. You may not retire till you're 65.
Yeah.
Someone who loses a third of their wealth at age 55 or 60, that's a tough one.
Okay.
They may have to reduce their lifestyle in retirement by a third, which is huge.
Yep.
So that's what capacity is. It's tied to your income. It's tied to your financial obligations. Do you have a car lease? Do you have a mortgage? What is your capacity? Does your partner work? No, they're stay at home. So it's just all on one income provider in the family. So everyone has a different capacity.
Got it.
And there's a couple of tests where you can measure the capacity of someone. Okay. So let's do one of those.
Okay.
Is your income stable?
Right now in this present moment.
Okay.
No.
You get a check mark or an X.
Okay.
Okay. Next up, do you have any emergency savings?
Yes.
Okay. So you get a check mark. Next up, debt level.
I got some, so let's do a check mark.
No, debt isn't good, right?
Oh, I thought I was saying I have debt. You're saying
You have a fair bit of debt. That's an X.
Got it.
Okay. Next, your time horizon.
Ripe and 26.
Okay, you got it. You get a check mark. Next up, do you have any dependents or obligations?
No.
That you haven't told me about?
No.
Okay, good. No boyfriend
So
dependents?
a check or an X?
No boyfriends that are living off your income?
Check
Okay.
or an X?
Okay.
Wait, what is that if
That's
I
a
don't
check.
have dependents? Okay.
That's a check. Investment knowledge. Check or an X?
Half check?
You can't, there's no such thing. Check or an X? Audience, what do you give Georgia? I give her an X right now. Maybe by the end of this series, she'll be a check mark.
Okay.
And finally, job security. How safe is your job?
X.
X. Okay, so you're sort of in the middle.
So for the viewers that are listening, I have 4 fingers up on my X hand and 3 fingers up on my checked hand.
So your capacity is a little below where you'd ideally like to be. Once you're completed your degree, you're back paying down your debt, you've got some job security, that may switch completely.
Totally.
You may be 5 and 2. Okay? So
Got
that's
it.
capacity.
That's a great little test.
Any questions on that?
No, I think that covers it. And I think it's a good exercise for people to.
Okay. That covers risk tolerance, risk capacity. We're going to then, as we move forward into the next podcast, we're going to talk about how that starts to put your portfolio together. Okay?
Awesome. I like it. I think this was great for part 2 of our 5-episode investing series. And I mean, let's list off the main takeaways here. You list the two.
Risk profile is really important.
Yep.
Risk capacity is equally important. And you need to know roughly both before you decide on your portfolio. And here's what's interesting. Once you decide on your portfolio, and this is going to be controversial, you typically don't need to change your portfolio for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that was a real mic drop for the end of this episode.
It was. Looking forward to discuss that next week.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here for another episode number 10, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks, everyone.